you speak to trainers and camps and find that information. I never ever even thought of that process. So thank you for sharing that. A few things you said there, Adam. You mentioned Miller, and you also mentioned boxing is an entertainment
Mm-hmm.
industry. Some people do think, well, it's one of my favorites. It's my favorite. I love the heavyweight division, middleweight division. Ever since it was the thing that I did with my dad, the thing that we had in common. Even though we don't really talk that much, but when it comes to boxing, we'll have a beer together, and watch it. And then who's gonna win? We'll share notes. It's just that kind of thing that brings us together. But for some people, they feel that boxing is a brutal sport,
Mm-hmm.
punching a man's head senseless, causing brain damage and things like that. And I suppose that's not the point I'm trying to get to, but you mentioned like Miller. Miller was caught a few years ago
Mm-hmm.
for drug cheating.
Mm-hmm.
I think they said Conor Ben, was cleared. But what's your opinion if somebody is caught with PEDs in their system? Should they be allowed to box again with the environment? You see it firsthand in front of you in the ring. Is that something that somebody's made a mistake? Food's been contaminated? Or, should there be one glove fits all?
Sean, let's get this absolutely straight. There is no place in boxing for drugs. There is no place in boxing for drug cheats. Absolutely not, because it is a very dangerous sport. It's you look at athletics and other sports that have had big problems with drugs, and the thing with boxing, as you said, you're hitting each other. It's hard enough as it is, and there will always be critics out there for boxing. I have, my stepmom's not the biggest boxing fan, but I have long chats with her and say that there are so many people that have been saved because of boxing, the discipline, the structure, taking kids off the streets who are going the wrong way and giving them hope. Even Lily Winch the other night at the York or Bethnal Green was having all sorts of problems at school. She didn't fit in, and she found the boxing gym, and she's had a total transformation in life. So, and there's huge amounts of stories around the world, in Mexico, America, Mexico, Puerto Rico, all the places that I've traveled. I did a lot of, in the early Sky days, I did a lot of reporting around some very, very difficult areas of the world. And, boxing in many ways has saved a huge amounts of young kids, wayward kids, and it's taught them the way. And they don't even have to become fighters. It's just the manner of going to a gym, the camaraderie, the teamwork, the sustained sort of concentration and focus on something, and the enjoyment, and obviously the physical and mental well-being. So drugs is very difficult. It's a grey area. We know that there's been people that have failed drugs tests a lot over the years, and it's never nice to hear. The trouble is, I guess you never really get the full truth. It's very hard. So the testing is expensive. Sometimes it's just urine testing. Sometimes it's blood, VADA. It depends sort of what level the event, the promoters, the managers, the fighters go to for testing. And in my opinion, they should be thoroughly tested throughout. Andy Murray used to say to me, because he's a big boxing fan, and he and I and Johnny Nelson got very close for a while, and he loved talking boxing, and he used to say it was awful because in tennis they do random testing, and he said people complain that they're always turning up, whatever. He said, I never complain because I know how important it is, and I think about boxers because boxers are tennis players. We're just hitting the ball hard at each other, right? It's a 101. There's a lot of similarities, but boxers are, every time they get in the ring, their lives are on the line. They have to protect themselves. They have to, they have to. Ultimately, it's a skilled sport, but ultimately, you've got to hit the other guy to win the fight, right? So it's so dangerous. So there's no place for drugs. When fighters fail drugs tests, it's not up to me. It's not up to the promoter. It's not up to the fighter what the punishment is. It's up to the commission or the license regulator. Whoever, the British board here, or the difference with the boards in the world. There's lots of different states in America, and people have a different sort of take on it. Some are banned for a period of time, some are banned for a long period. And then fighters always claim innocence, right? They'll always say, oh, they got into my system via anything. Eggs, as we've seen
Contaminated
recently.
steak.
Wild boar. We've had all sorts, haven't we? And there's been a lot of fighters that have been brushed with that potential drugs problem. And many have said, look, it's either contaminated something or somebody obviously put something in my system because I wouldn't have done it. And I guess that's the thing, Sean, going back to it. We'll never really know the truth. It is such a grey area. So I will say there is no place for drugs in the sport. However, if you've been deemed to have served, your time, your ban from it, and that's what you've done, and that's the rule, then you're then cleared to fight again. That's what it is. So, Jarrell Miller has failed tests before, but if he is cleared to fight again, and that's not up to me, that's not probably even up to him. It's up to the governing bodies, and if they decide that he's okay to fight, or any of the others to fight, not Conor Benn, we know is fighting in a couple of weeks' time, and everyone wants to see that fight. It's a huge fight, and probably most of the casuals on the street don't care. They just want to see whether Ben fights Eubank or Eubank fights Ben. But obviously, no one wants drugs anywhere near it. And if Conor, who failed the test, said, look, I haven't taken drugs, maybe there's a way that something's got into his system, or it is a peculiarity. You never quite know. And because I'm not a scientist or a doctor, I can't really talk about what's in the system. All I can do is, like you, I read what's happened, and I just keep the same thing, which I think every fighter and every commentator agrees, which is there is no place for drugs in the sport. The trouble, I guess, is if you know or you think somebody has taken drugs and then the opponent thinks, well, if he's taken drugs, then I've got to try and be on the same plane. That's when you get into real trouble. So look, the best thing is the testing has to be absolutely critical. I think there should be more of it. How it's paid for. I mean, there's Turki Al-Sheikh, who's changed boxing, and Dana White coming in, and they want to make it into a sort of round UFC type thing, and I'm with one champion and all of that. And while that's going on, maybe it's where they need to spend more money on the VADA testing, the very best testing we have, to try and eliminate it as much as possible. Will it ever be eliminated? I don't know, because, as I said, it's such a grey area about what is. And then there's the innocent fighters who've taken something by mistake, or have taken something from a shelf that they thought was maybe even for a cold or something, which they didn't realise was on the ban list. But really, an athlete at that level should know his body, and should, if he fails something, be able to say, hey, look, I failed it. It may not be me. It may have got into my system in another way, but I need to take responsibility for that, because it's a failed test. Or we're going to fight it, but if it says positive, then I've got to take the hit on this, even if I haven't willingly taken drugs. So it's a tough one.
So here's one for you. If someone is found to have performance enhancing drugs in their system, they win a fight and they've done damage to somebody else, should they be going down for GBH, manslaughter, sort of
again, that's not an area I can get into. I'm not a lawyer, a solicitor, a judge, or anything like that. So boxing's a dangerous sport. All I'll say is there is no room or no place for drugs in that sport. And you don't know. It's like with boxing, you can't have an action replay or stop something again. It happened at the weekend, not in drugs, but with David Adelaide and TKV. And David Adelaide wins by knockout. He's the British heavyweight champion, and okay, he wins, but if the referee said break a couple of times, well, what about that then? Okay, TKV's knocked out. They can't stop it, go back and start again. They have to either have a rematch, or they have to accept boxing's a rough business, and once or twice these sort of things happen and hands go down, and you got to protect yourself. So it's a very difficult one. If someone is found guilty of drugs and the other guy's got badly hurt, then okay, there's going to be some sort of legal battle, you'd have thought, ensuing on that. But we ifs, buts, and maybes. All we can do is go with. I'm a commentator. I commentate on what's in front of me. I don't decide. People used to say to me at Sky, it's like, it's your fault that you're head of boxing, that's happening or whatever. Yeah, sometimes maybe it is, but ultimately I don't decide. The promoter puts the fights on. We do talk about it, about what should go on, but the promoter is in charge of the event and what fights go on. The fighters are responsible for actually fighting, so that's another unknown or unpredictable. We as commentators commentate on it. It's like when we went to Saudi and people were saying you shouldn't go to Saudi Arabia. Went to Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia was the event putting on the show. I've been to Saudi many times in the last few years, and I think there's huge change going on in Saudi, and that's really good to see. So I think it's always best to stay out of the sort of areas of, what should happen like that with the drugs, whatever. I'm a commentator. I'm a broadcaster. It's not my job to decide that. I have an opinion, and my opinion is there should be no drugs in sport.